var www error no index.html when there is no index.html. Well, that leads us to the next point. Let's create an index.html file. We'll navigate to var www.html where no files currently exist. And we'll nano index.html. And the suffix is incorrect, but we'll rename it when we're finished. So HTML, body, and close body. And in it, we'll just center and indicate test of 192.168.75.199 default Apache server. Let's save the changes. We'll move index.thtml to index.html. That was a typo. Now we've got a file, but beware, again, the document must be readable by either the user Apache or the group Apache. In this case, Apache will be able to serve a document, and that is will be able to, because for the other block, or for the last 3 bits in the permission set, everyone can at least read the document, and that's all that's required in order for Apache to serve content from the file. So from the browser, let's attempt to refresh this page, and now notice it returns test of, or the HTML document that we just created. Because again, that simple check in welcome.conf, which is included in the overall configuration, is meant to determine whether or not a directory indexed file, either index.html or index.html.var, exists. If it doesn't, then the error document that's to be thrown is this noindex.html file. So now we can begin serving content from that directory quite easily. Which leads us to another feature of Apache, and that is the ability to support aliases. So fourth task, create an alias for content outside of the web root. And we know the web root to be var www.html, which means we can create content, let's say in var www test alias 1. And in there we'll just populate an index.html file. And we'll copy the one we just created. So we'll copy HTML index.html. First we'll make a directory calling it test alias 1. Then, if successful, we'll copy index.html to test alias 1. And if that's successful, we'll LSL test alias 1. Then that's been successful. Let's modify test alias 1 index.html, and we'll just indicate that this is test alias 1 so that we know it's the file that we created. Now with that said, we need an alias, because if you attempt from the browser to access test alias 1, it'll fail. Because test alias 1 is, or this reference attempts to access test alias 1 beneath the defined document root of var www HTML, which causes Apache to return its signature and an error. This is a 404 error, file not found. So with that said, let's modify that config file, etc httpd.conf. In fact, we can do it from a separate window. We'll nano httpd.conf, and we'll navigate towards the bottom, just to give us some breathing room. We will define an alias using the alias directive for test alias 1, followed by its full path, which is var www test alias 1, and then we'll include a directory directive which includes the full path. We'll close it out. Again, no need to memorize. You can find a directory directive that's included somewhere else in your document and just copy and paste the options that are there. And the more you do so, making use of the existing template, the easier it'll become. You'll get accustomed to the directives. Let's find one for, here is one for the error, and we'll include some of these options here. Allow from all, this should be fine. Then we'll Control V to the bottom and simply paste it. So allow override none, that's always a good option. Options, we can include none, which means you need to have a default page. Add output filter, add handler are not important. We'll allow access from all. So we will not allow someone to place a hidden htaccess file in test alias 1, overriding our directives. There are no options. We won't index it at this point, or follow symlinks, or allow scripts to be executed, or any other feature, multi-views, etc. But we will allow access from all. You need a directory directive to govern the directory that you're serving if it's outside of the web root, unless the directory is a subdirectory of a top-level directory that is already covered by a directory directive in one of the configuration files. Keep that in mind at all times. So we'll save changes. Then we'll restart Apache using service httpd restart. This will restart the config, and let's try not to lose the echo of the exit status. The exit status, by the way, if we haven't mentioned, this $ question variable, it's really a question variable, is updated for every command executed in each unique TTY or terminal. So when you execute echo and you miss the O like I tend to do, you lose the status of the exit status for the last or previously executed command. So here we see it's 127 instead of 0. Had we executed echo $ without messing up the command, it turns 0. So this variable gets updated dynamically, just like pwd and opwd do as you move about the directory structure. So Apache has been restarted, and we should also make one other observation, and that is, in var log httpd, the logging is taking place. Error and access log files are being written. If you tail var log httpd error log, you'll see anything related to errors as well as the fact that the server has been restarted. And here we see it's configured, it's resuming normal operations. The access log contains attempts to access the server, including the variables that we saw defined in the main configuration file. Connecting hosts, any ident information, which is usually blank, the timestamp of the connection with the GMT offset, the request that was made, get for test alias, which failed, it generated an error of 404, 288 bytes were transferred. Here's the user agent, there was no refer. So the log information is working as expected now from the browser. We should attempt to access test alias 1 again, and there it is, test alias 1. So now we're accessing content that's outside of the web root via this alias. So creating aliases is as simple as we've just shown you. You simply modify the config file, and we'll cat the contents once more, to include an alias named with the alias, or named after the alias that works for you, that's ideal for your situation. It can be any name you'd like, but try not to duplicate them throughout your config, and point it to a hard location on the file system. It doesn't have to be beneath var www, it can be anywhere, but then you need to ensure that there is a directory directive which governs access to the physical location with appropriate directives. Allow override none is optional, but you do need to indicate whether or not access is allowed to the content. The primary Apache process, or the parent process, always has access. However, Apache honors the directives that it finds throughout its config files, and whether or not it can see the content is independent of whether or not it will serve you the content. Now, before we move on too far and forget, let's set as another task that will set Apache up to restart appropriately. So we've set up our alias using alias test alias 1, and we followed this up with a directory directive block pointing to the physical location of the directory. And again, many of the Apache directives follow this sort of format, but you can always consult the documentation to get a clear understanding of how the directives work. Once you work with a few of them, you should have very little trouble working with most of them. So we set allow override to none, and we also set order, allow deny, and allow from all to allow access to the content. Now let's just ensure that Apache will start when the system boots. And this you should know how to do using check config level 3.5 for run levels 3 and 5 HTTPD on, followed by check config list HTTPD will confirm for us that Apache will become a part of our normal modus operandi. And we'll try that. Now we see it's set for 3 and 5. So it will be on when the system boots, barring no catastrophic errors when the system is turned on. Now next, we're going to look at virtual hosts, a way to map user requests to different IP addresses as well as to the same IP address, but to route that traffic into different directories, different areas of content on our server.